Earthkeeper 2018 Stargate Video Productions, and James Tyberonn are very pleased to present acclaimed film documentarian, world-renowned visionary, internationally best-selling author, and extraordinary speaker, Graham Hancock. Filmed live in beautiful Little Rock, before a sold-out capacity audience, at the Earthkeeper Arclantis event, in the Crystal Vortex of Sacred Arkansas. Graham Hancock offers a very special, personalized sharing of his experiences climbing the great Egyptian pyramid of Giza, followed by a brief question-and-answer session with the audience. Graham will begin immediately after the brief opening musical excerpt from Beethoven's masterpiece, the Ode to Joy, Ninth Symphony. Graham will also be keynote speaker at the epic Earthkeeper Arclantis event in Sacred Ark on Equinox Weekend, September 2018. Enjoy, and Namaste, from James Tyberonn and Earthkeeper. All copyrights duly reserved to www.earthkeeper.com.
Everyone, I'd like to welcome you to our final conference day of the Arclantis event. We want to welcome all of the worldwide viewers watching us on live stream video. It is my great honor and pleasure to once again introduce my dear friend, a walking master, one of the people I admire most in the entire world, Graham Hancock.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'm going to do today, I've been kindly given a little bit of extra time. As you know, I need extra time. I'm going to give a presentation that will run slightly less than an hour. I promise not more. And then after that, we'll do half an hour of Q&A. And then we have to run to the airport and get on a flight to London. And I'm going to start this presentation with an 8 or 10 minute video. Santa and I have climbed the Great Pyramid 5 times. Twice legally and 3 times illegally. What I'm going to show you now is film that we took on our first legal climb. Only it was semi-legal and slightly worrying. And just at the beginning, I recall our first illegal climb, which took place at the dead of night. So let me just play this because I want to talk to you about the pyramids today, and this just gives you a sense of what this structure is like to actually get to grips with. So please just bear with us for the next 10 minutes while I run this. And we're with Robert Boval and myself and Santa Faya.
We were so alarmed with all the guards coming and going, and the feeling of doing something illegal, with hiding behind the blocks and avoiding the lights from the lamps. It was a great adventure, but we finally made it to the top.
You know, even after what we've done 10 courses, look at this.
10 courses is already exhausting. Always check your footing before you move away.
Hey Graham, this is the life.
This is the life. You're not kidding. It's exhilarating. It's a wonderful feeling of being in the right place at the right time.
Well, this is the right time. The equinox, I tell you.
Not kidding.
And it's funny.
This was 1996, by the way.
Sure are. You okay? We shouldn't waste too much time going up because we may get an awkward guard at some point.
And once we're up, forget it. We'll pretend we...
This is okay. So we can. I can feel this.
Careful with that bag on your back. Yeah. It's catching on the rock. Shall I film you a bit, Robert?
Yeah.
Still careful, please.
Robert Boval.
Totally out of focus. No way. Oh look, the second pyramid is catching the...
Yeah. Santa.
Oh, I bought this smell.
You want to? I'm casting an equinoctial shadow. I'm a gnomon. You're extremely backlit there.
It's okay. If I come this way
Yeah, you have a...
and see if we can get the other pyramid.
Careful. Look. Oh, interesting shot. Can I get above?
Should I shoot one of you with it?
How about one of you and me kind of sitting and looking at this pyramid?
Well, we'll do it from the top.
The top would be good.
From the top, it's really nice.
Well, it's photographer's paradise, huh?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's amazing. If you tilt up, and tilt down onto both of you,
Yeah.
and then tilt up. It's incredible. It's a love. The second pyramid is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful monument. It really is.
Can we go up, right, so we can have them go like...
Yeah, let's get going. We don't want to waste this wonderful
You know that we're watching it from approximately half a kilometer away, eh?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
carry on with the
let's
climb.
get up now. Nearly there.
Oh wow. It's a wonderful shot. Okay, here's the summit, huh?
Almost.
It is.
Another 20, 30 feet and we'll be there. That cloud dissipates. I don't look at it very much. Okay. None of the Greek monuments compare in even a tiny fraction with the monuments of Egypt. They're pitiful by comparison.
Okay, here you are.
Although I must say the Parthenon is very beautiful.
But it's funny, I'm not that inspired by the classical.
No. Well, you can see that they copied Karnak anyway. It's basically, they're all copies of what
Okay.
famous stuff.
We're there, Santa.
Hi, good morning to you. Full causeway quite well from here, Robert. Don't fall off, huh?
There you are.
Look where you're going.
Second pyramid. And we pan down.
You can even see the edge of Menkara from here. Yeah, it's definitely. Do you want me to film you a bit, Robert? I'm going to tilt round to the Sphinx. Back to you. Over to the second pyramid. There's Salta. Up to the top.
Well, here we are. Day of the spring equinox. On top of the Great Pyramid. Where else?
Where else to be on that day?
I mean, where else? really Sphinx-like yourself, actually. Praise to Ra.
A good start for the day where we're going to have a quick look at our final proof.
Yeah.
They brought it up here, by the way.
Oh, but you don't have the final proof.
I have them. Well, I have the ones that they sent me.
The ones they sent, yeah. She phoned and said she's going to be couriering
Yeah, I know.
a proper final proof.
That we refer to. That was the final proofs of the book that Robert and I published in 1996 called Message of the Sphinx. And we had just received the proof copy of it. Well, that was 21 years ago. Time goes by. You can climb the Great Pyramid if you're reasonably fit in about 25 minutes. It can sometimes take a little bit longer than that. Some of the block sizes are no higher than your knee. Other ones are chest high, and you have to kind of mountaineer up them. So I've taken you outside the Great Pyramid, and I'm now, in the next 30 minutes or so, just going to take you a journey around the inside of the Great Pyramid. Let's see what I've got here. So the pyramids of Giza loom over the entire city of Cairo. I mean, you really can't go anywhere without being aware of them. They're just always there in the background. And now Santa took this photograph from an Egyptian army helicopter flying over the village of Nazlet al-Saman that lies on the east side of the pyramids, and the Sphinx is just over here. Great Pyramid, Second Pyramid, Third Pyramid. It's rightly said that Egypt is the gift of the Nile. You can see the green and fertile Nile Valley and the Sia Desert stretching off to the west of the Giza Plateau. And we look here at the three Great Pyramids. This is the entrance to the Great Pyramid here. The true original entrance is here. The entrance that was broken into in the 10th century by Caliph al-Mamun is the entrance we all go through now, and that's a little bit lower. Standing on top of the Great Pyramid here, an amazing place to be. I mean, you can feel this just monument vibrating with power and energy under your feet. You know, it's detached from the system that created it. It's broken, it's damaged, it's stood there for thousands of years, and it still beams out its message. It's a kind of beacon of initiation, calling to those who are open and willing to listen to the message it has to give. Oh, that's my grandfather, Philip Hancock. I've told you this before, but I found his graffiti one step behind me at the top of the Great Pyramid. 5th of April 1916, climbed Great Pyramid today is what it says in his diary. And there he is, a young man. He was there with British forces in 1916. He was completely crazy Hancock, just like me. That's the corner you want to go up, whether you're climbing legally or illegally. That is the southwest corner. It's good to follow a corner line. You can get lost on the acreage of the faces, but if you go up a corner, it's relatively straightforward, and the southwest corner is the cleanest and best preserved. This monument has a footprint of more than 13 acres. It's 481 feet high. It weighs 6 million tons, 2.3 million individual blocks of stone. The lost casing stones that came off in an earthquake in 1301 weighed about 115 I don't give the weight. I can't do the math. But there's 115,000 shaped blocks weighing 10 tons each. Go figure it out. Angle of slope is 52 degrees. All the internal corridors of the Great Pyramid slope at half the angle of the external angle of slope. So 52 degrees outside, these all slope at 26 degrees, half of the 52 degrees. There's the subterranean chamber. It lies 100 feet beneath the base of the Great Pyramid. It's hewn out of solid bedrock. We do believe that this is part of the prehistoric pyramid, that there was a structure at this site 12,800 years ago, but that the work was completed much later by the ancient Egyptians according to the system that had been passed down to them by the hands of the gods. And this is the original feature, we believe, of the Great Pyramid. You approach it down this narrow corridor. The descending corridor slopes at 26 degrees, 3 feet 5 inches high, 3 feet 5 inches wide. You have to kind of ape walk down it. When you get to the bottom, you find a horizontal corridor. You have to drop onto your knees there. It's so narrow, and crawl through into the subterranean chamber. When we go back up the descending corridor, we come into the ascending corridor, which is this one here. And at the junction of the ascending corridor and the grand gallery is a side passageway that leads to the so-called Queen's Chamber. And the Queen's Chamber has these two narrow entrances cut into its south and north walls. They were not known until 1872. They were covered by slabs. It looked like a perfectly intact room, but a British Freemason named John Wayneman Dixon went around tapping on the walls and found two hollow points. And sure enough, when he broke through, here were these shafts. And these shafts go up about, well, we don't know how far into the Great Pyramid they go. They do not emerge on the outside. The ones from the King's Chamber do emerge on the outside, but in 1993, Rudolf Gantenbrink, a German engineer, sent a little robot up this shaft with a camera. And after a journey of 165 feet, the robot came to this door with two metal handles. Remember that this shaft is about 8 inches high and 8 inches wide. No human being is ever going to get into there, but it's like an invitation. As soon as Rudolf had made this discovery, he was kicked off the site by Zahi Hawass and never allowed to return. Zahi then took over the project, had a robot made in the University of Singapore, and went back many years later to find out what lay behind the door. They mounted a drill on the front of that second robot, and they drilled a hole through the door. And guess what they found on the other side? They found a gap of about 8 feet and another door. They're still trying to figure out how to overcome that technical challenge to see what lies beyond. So this is the Grand Gallery. After you come out of the Queen's Chamber, you're again on this 26-degree slope. This is an incredible work of architecture. I mean, these blocks of stone weigh 30 or 40 tons each. They're inclined at 26 degrees. They're part of a great cavity inside the Great Pyramid. They lean towards one another in a corbel vault. They are perfectly, precisely joined together. You literally cannot get a sheet of paper between them. The Grand Gallery is 153 feet long, and it's 28 feet high. And this is what it looks like from the bottom, and up there is the antechamber to the King's Chamber. So there's Zahi Hawass. Many of you will have heard that a new cavity has been found inside the Great Pyramid. And indeed it has. It's been found with muon sensing equipment, cosmic ray sensing equipment, and that new cavity runs parallel but above the Grand Gallery. It's almost as though there's an entire second passageway system inside the Great Pyramid, which has never been found until today, and we still don't know where its entrance is. But it's a fascinating discovery. Egyptologists should be excited about it. But here's Hawass speaking to Agence France Presse. He said he met other scientists from Scan Pyramids who showed us their conclusions, and we informed them that this is not a discovery. The pyramid is full of voids, and that does not mean there is a sacred chamber. A secret chamber. Does this man have something to hide, I wonder? Because he keeps pouring cold water on any and every new discovery. And yet stuff is going on behind the scenes, and it's really difficult to say exactly what is happening at Giza. But there you are. There's a huge new void being discovered in the Great Pyramid directly above the Grand Gallery, and interestingly, running into the top of the chambers that lie above the King's Chamber. This is the King's Chamber here. This is the antechamber to the King's Chamber. This is the top of the Grand Gallery. Until the early 1800s, it wasn't known that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more chambers piled above the King's Chamber. What happened was that Howard Vyse blew a hole in the top of the Grand Gallery here. And lo and behold, that hole led into a corridor system, and he was able to access all of these other chambers. Today, to get up there, we've been up there several times, you have to, of course, have permission. Then you need to bring a rickety wooden ladder that's 30 feet high, and you prop it against the side of the Grand Gallery, and then you climb up it. A little rope hangs down. You grab that rope, and you haul yourself into this corridor system here, backwards, actually. and then you can make your way up through the different chambers. Each of them is floored with granite blocks weighing 70 tons each. There is the king's chamber. It's a perfect geometric room. Its dimensions are given there. The walls consist of 100 granite blocks. Most of the pyramid is limestone, but these granite blocks were brought more than 500 miles from quarries at Aswan in southern Egypt. And again, you can see the little shafts north and south in the king's chamber. Those do emerge on the outside of the pyramid. And back in the 19th century, they used to have fun rolling cannonballs down them to see them appear inside the king's chamber. This is the top of those relieving chambers, and you can see these huge granite blocks and, of course, the ghastly modern graffiti that has been put there ever since this place was discovered in the early 1800s. And we're there with a film crew. That's my daughter Layla. Again, this is back in the 1990s. And you just get a sense of the scale of these things. 70-ton blocks. You know, often the Egyptologists will announce, we've discovered how the Great Pyramid was built. They made the sand wet and dragged the blocks on the wet sand. Yeah, big deal, but how did they get them 300 feet in the air, you know, when they weigh 70 tons? So interestingly, this layout is very similar to the so-called Djed pillar, which represents the backbone of Osiris, and it's a symbol of the resurrection of Osiris. There's really no solid proof at all that connects the Great Pyramid to the pharaoh Khufu. There is a piece of graffiti in that upper relieving chamber. Its provenance is very dubious. There's a very strong case that it was forged by Howard Weiss, the vandal who broke in there in the first place. He was looking for an important discovery. What the Egyptologists tell us is that Khufu had this giant ego and he wanted to build the biggest monument ever made in the world for his tomb. I must say, for a man with a giant ego, it's surprising that this is the only statue that has survived of him, and it's 2.5 inches high. This double exposure that Santa took is really quite intriguing, because you see the Great Pyramid in the background, and what you see in the foreground is the tomb chamber of the Pyramid of Unas, a pharaoh of the 5th dynasty, some 150 years after the Great Pyramid was supposed to be built. The Great Pyramid is completely uninscribed, but the 5th dynasty pyramids at Saqqara are covered with inscriptions, and their chambers the ceilings are decorated with stars. These inscriptions are beautiful and stunning and just extraordinary to look at. In the cartouche, that is the name of the pharaoh Unas of the 5th dynasty. And what these are is they are the earliest recensions of a literature that we all know as the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is only part of a long literature, but essentially that literature conveys the same message. The earliest surviving are the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts written inside pyramids of the 5th and 6th dynasties. Then you have the ancient Egyptian coffin texts. They used to write the texts inside the coffin lid. The Book of the Dead was usually placed on a papyrus scroll with the mummy. This is the book of what is in the Duat, another one of those texts. The Duat was the afterlife realm through which the ancient Egyptians believed that our souls traveled after death. And all of these texts seek to prepare us for our journey through the Duat. And that was the ancient Egyptian afterlife kingdom ruled over by the god Osiris.
Earthkeeper, Stargate Video Productions. Copyrights, duly reserved 2018.
This is not Horus and Anubis. These are the souls of Pe and Nekhen. And they're a mysterious brotherhood that was charged with transmitting the secrets of the religion of Osiris forward through time. This photograph was taken in the tomb of Seti I in Abydos in Upper Egypt. And here is Osiris, the divine king of Egypt in the legendary first time Zep-Tepi, when the gods walked the earth. And he was murdered by Set and 72 conspirators. His body was hacked into pieces, reassembled and revivified through the magic powers of his consort, the goddess Isis. It's really a very extraordinary story, this. Here you can see, I'm just going to read a short passage from the Book of the Dead, but here you can see the body of Osiris. And this is Isis in the form of a bird, sometimes a kite, sometimes a swallow, and she is hovering over the phallus of Osiris, to receive his seed, to engender the divine child Horus, who will be the first of the Horus kings of Egypt. And every pharaoh saw himself as a descendant of that lineage. This process of Isis revivifying the body of Osiris and receiving his seed is described in a passage from the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. I'm going to read it to you, and I recommend strongly that you get this translation of the Book of the Dead. It's called Awakening Osiris, and it's by Normandy Ellis. The only problem is I don't have enough light to read. Could we adjust the light just for a moment? I know I like to be in darkness, but I'm going to read this. A little flashlight would no, I think we'll put the overhead lights on, if that's okay. Just for a second. Okay, I've got a flashlight. Don't worry about the overhead flashlights. Okay, Normandy Ellis translation. She's an Egyptologist and a poet, and it's the only translation of the Book of the Dead I really trust. I stand before the masters who witnessed the creation, who were with Ra. That morning the sun rolled into being, who were with Osiris in the grave as he gathered himself together and burst from the tomb, white with heat, a light and shining God. Hail Thoth, architect of truth, give me words of power that I may recall my years and weave together my history. Hail Thoth, architect of truth, give me words of power that I may form the characters of my own evolution. I stand before the masters who witnessed the generation, who were the authors of their own forms, who rolled into being, who walked the dark, circuitous passageways of their own becoming, who saw with their own eyes their destinies and the shapes of things to come. I stand before the masters who witnessed the working of magic, who were with Isis the evening she became the swallow, and her lamentations filled the air, who were with her as she shook down her black hair and veiled the god's transformation in secret, who witnessed the conception of the divine child, though his coming was yet unrevealed. Hail Thoth, architect of truth, give me words of power, that when I speak the life of a man, I may give his story meaning. I stand before the masters who know the histories of the dead, who decide what tales to hear again, who judge the books of lives as either full or empty, who are themselves authors of truth. And they are Isis and Osiris, the divine intelligences. And when the story is written, and the end is good, and the soul of a man is perfected, with a shout, they lift him into heaven. Hail Thoth, architect of truth, give me words of power that I may complete my story and begin life anew. I stand before the masters who witnessed the transformation of the body of a man into the body and spirit, who were witnesses to the resurrection when the corpse of Osiris entered the mountain and the soul of Osiris walked out shining. He gathered his heel and his leg. He gathered his arms and his backbones. He gathered the dreams crackling inside the dark cave of his skull. He knitted himself together in secret. He came forth from death, a shining thing, his face white with heat. Let me give you this back. Is that yours? So that's the extraordinary background I think we need to take into account to what the pyramid is about and to the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts. Here we see Horus performing the rituals, engendering the resurrection in the heavens of his father Osiris, and thus of the pharaoh Seti I, who's seen at the right offering incense to Osiris. Horus comes to you, O king, that he may do for you what he did for his father Osiris, so that you may live as those in the sky live, that you may be more extant than those who exist on earth. Raise yourself because of your strength. May you ascend to the sky. May the sky give birth to you like Orion. May you have power in your body, and may you protect yourself from your foe. Resurrected in the heavens, Osiris became Lord of the Duat, God of the dead, master of eternity and immortality. And we see him here on the left, riding his boat of stars, and he's holding out the Ankh, the symbol of eternal life, showing the way to the Horus kings, the future pharaohs of Egypt, who are to maintain the Osirian system on earth, just as Osiris maintains it in the heavens in his Duat afterlife kingdom. The purpose of the system is to perfect the immortal soul of the initiate. And there's no dispute, Osiris was definitely identified with the constellation of Orion by the ancient Egyptian, and Orion was viewed as the figure of Osiris in the night sky, ruling over the celestial afterlife kingdom of the Duat, which is roughly the area between Orion and Leo, with the Milky Way, the winding waterway, running through it. And in the framework of the Assyrian religion, I went into this yesterday, the whole vast scheme looks like a device to transform men into gods, companions of Orion who navigate the Duat with Osiris. And since Osiris was said to have ruled in Zep Tepi the first time, perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that the astronomical layout of this site hints at extremely ancient origins. This Duat afterlife kingdom was both a region of the sky, and it was a physical realm with corridors and passageways, an underworld and an above world, if you like. And the soul must journey through this, often led by the psychopomp, the jackal-headed mortuary god. Anubis would sometimes act as a guide and companion of the soul. And again, notice the Ankh, symbol of immortal life, clutched in the left hand of Pharaoh Seti I here. The ancient texts make it absolutely clear that some great secret lay concealed in the 5th division of the Duat, which is referred to both as the land of Sokar and as Rosto. Of course, it's not an accident that one of the ancient names of Giza was Rostau. I suggest that what Giza is, in fact, is a representation on the ground, a three-dimensional representation of the Duat afterlife kingdom. We see a sphinx, we see pyramids, we see a sphinx in these images of the Duat, painted on tomb walls, for example, in the Valley of the Kings, and a pyramid as well. And the suggestion of a chamber with this curious winged serpent inside it. And in fact, if you look at images of the Duat, you'll find them on every tomb painting in Egypt. These are from the tomb of Thutmose III in the Valley of the Kings. You can see that there are rising corridors and galleries, exactly like the Grand Gallery. And boats feature in the Duat. So again, I don't think it's a coincidence that a giant wooden boat was found buried beside the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This place is some kind of simulator for the afterlife journey. This is not about the ego of a pharaoh. This is about a grand project of raising human consciousness to a higher level. And again, certain similarities between scenes in the Duat and physical representations in the Great Pyramid. The King's Chamber, the so-called sarcophagus of Khufu. Look, they found a sarcophagus in there, and they concluded that it had been put there to bury the pharaoh Khufu, although no pharaoh's body was ever found in this monument. As a matter of fact, this chamber was built around the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus is too wide to get in through the narrow corridor system. The chamber had to be built around it, and we do not think, I and my colleagues do not think it had anything to do with the burial of a pharaoh. Rather, it was a place for the performance of ceremony and ritual. Perhaps a symbolic death and rebirth was undertaken in that sarcophagus. It was certainly not as simple as burying a mummy in there. What we suggest is going on in the King's Chamber is that it represents a place in the Duat called the Judgment Hall of Osiris. It's also known as the Hall of Maat. And here, from Deir al-Bahri in Upper Egypt, we see scenes from what happens in that chamber. Here we see the soul of the deceased being ushered into the Hall of Maat. This is the goddess Maat. She wears the feather of truth, harmony, and cosmic justice on her headdress. That is the symbol of truth and harmony and cosmic justice. And then we see a scales here. I'll come back to that scales. On the right-hand side, Osiris sits in judgment. Here is Amit, the eater of the dead. Our whole life is our opportunity to prepare for this moment. Because what will happen in this moment is that our souls, represented by this image of the heart here, our souls will be weighed in the scale against the feather of truth and cosmic justice. And you do not want to find your heart weighing heavy in those scales. The ancient Egyptians understood human frailty. They understood that we make errors, that we make mistakes. None of us are perfect. This is not entirely about moral judgment. This is about what we do with our lives. And from the ancient Egyptian point of view, a human life could be regarded as a work of art. You might make mistakes here and there in your piece of sculpture or your painting as you go along through the decades of your life. There might be a crack or an error or a bit of damage. But you know what? You work around it and you put it right, and you make damn sure, if you made a bad mistake before, that you do not at least repeat it. You cannot go back and put right what you did wrong in the past, but you don't have to keep on doing it. That's one of the messages of the ancient Egyptian texts. And they understood that there is time in a human life, 70, 80, 90 years if we're lucky. There is time in a human life to learn from our mistakes, to grow and to develop, so that we can come to the end of life and look at our life's work as a piece of art and say, yes, I made a mistake here, but I put it right there. Yes, I caused pain here, but I gave love there. On balance, I did good. That's ultimately what you need to say. And then your destiny can move forward. If, however, you have added to the stock of human misery consciously and deliberately through your life, if you have caused pain, if you have taken from the earth and never given back, if you have been a cruel and domineering and wicked person, taking advantage of others all the way through your life, this is the fate that awaits you. Amit, the eater of the dead. The ancient Egyptians saw no future for such an individual. Such an individual's story would be over. They would not be reborn. They would not come back to learn and develop further. But if you are justified in the judgment, Thoth writes your name on the tablet, and to you is granted the life of millions of years. And perhaps the monuments formed a sacred landscape in which the afterlife journey, the ultimate goal of joining Osiris in the starry sky and winning the life of millions of years could be prepared for, serving almost like a simulator for the duat. In short, I would say that the ancient Egyptian system, of which the Great Pyramid is the cornerstone, was part of an ancient spiritual system that celebrated and nurtured the gift of life and sought immortal life, but did not take it for granted. That is Thoth writing the name of Pharaoh Seti I on the ancient Egyptian tree of life. It's a whole other story, but the tree of life is Acacia nilotica, and its bark contains substantial qualities of the powerful visionary agent dimethyltryptamine. I think the ancient Egyptians used plant medicines in their explorations of the meaning and mystery of life. This was a culture that devoted its best minds for 3,000 years for considering what happens to us when we die and how we should prepare for that moment. Look what our culture is devoting its best minds to: making weapons of mass destruction and better refrigerators and washing machines. We are definitely on the wrong track. Okay, thank you. And now we have a little time. Actually, I got that done quite quickly. So, so let's do this Q&A. I'll do my best to answer any questions that are put to me. I think there's some kind of plan to have a microphone here. Will somebody help me moderate this? Okay, so the purpose of the microphone is so that others can hear the question as well. And if you would like to ask a question, please come and ask it at this microphone, which is right here. Come ahead.
In late January, my partner Paula and I are going to Costa Rica to the Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. We were delighted to see your testimonial on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and it resonates so much with what we're about here. I thought maybe you might say something.
Thank you for raising that. Because I've worked a lot with the plant medicines over the years, I initially drank ayahuasca in 2003 as part of a research project. I went to the Amazon and had 11 sessions with ayahuasca, the vine of the dead, because I was writing a book in which I needed to have that experience. But afterwards, it became a kind of life work for me, and since then I've had more than 70 ayahuasca sessions, and I have continued to benefit from the medicine and to learn from the medicine. Not is all sweetness and light in the garden of ayahuasca. There are a lot of corrupt and dishonest shamans offering false ceremony and often letting in dark and negative energies to the space that need to be kept out. So I'm often asked, where is a safe place to go and drink ayahuasca, especially for those who are not really keen on sitting in the middle of the Amazon jungle and getting bitten by mosquitoes and vampire bats all night. The problem is that ayahuasca is illegal throughout the Western Hemisphere, except in one place, Costa Rica. And for those who are interested in a safe, medically supervised, comfortable, and experienced plant medicine ceremony, there's a resort in Costa Rica called Rhythmia, started by a tremendously interesting man called Jerry Powell, whose life was literally turned around by the plant medicines. And you can take it from there. Thank you very much. Next, please.
I think I speak for a lot of people. Graham and Santha, very special to me, your work, and I think you're special for so many. Is there something that we can do as laymen to assist you in your work?
Well, thank you. That's a good. First of all, thank you for your kind comments, and secondly, what keeps me going? What keeps me going all the time is I feel so blessed. Is the love and the positive energy that I receive, you know, from all of you and from everybody. I'm so grateful for that. I have taken a lot of very unpleasant attacks and very unpleasant criticism from the so-called skeptics in our society, and some real dirty tricks have been played. But every time I feel them stick one of their little knives in me, I remember how much love I'm given and how much support and how much generous energy is sent my way. So thank you very much. As to specifics of what to do, I just think the most important thing is always to keep on asking questions. Never take anything off the peg as you're told it is, whether it comes from me or from anybody else. Make your own path in life. Seek your own journey. See what you can find out. We've all got pieces to contribute to the puzzle. And that's what we should all be doing, because we need to know the truth about our past. While our past is hidden behind a veil of lies, we are never going to be able to confidently make our way into the future. We need to rediscover the truth of our past. Yes, come ahead.
Do you feel that the new director of antiquities is any more enlightened than Zahi Hawass?
No, I don't. But he seems to have a slightly smaller ego, which is not a bad thing. But they all seem to buy into this maintaining the status quo, and not really seeming to want anything new to come out. Yeah. It's not like the pyramid, the new void. It's not like this is a really interesting discovery. Let's find out what's going on. It's like, nah, this is rubbish. Let's just ignore it. There's something wrong with that mindset, and it's why Egyptology has been literally turned into a kind of fossil itself that is not advancing progress in this area. I don't mean to put Egyptologists down. There are some great Egyptologists. There's a whole new generation of archaeologists and Egyptologists who are coming out who are beginning to ask questions. Okay. But we need more of them. Yeah. We need more of them. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Graham, after your talk, I have run out of all questions. So I just wish to give you the feather of my hat.
Oh.
Because through the courage for the truth that you have had, your heart is lighter than a feather.
Thank you. That's a beautiful gift. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My hat.
Your hat is here.
I didn't take my hat off, I took my feather.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you. Come ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
I'm hanging in there.
Good. I would really appreciate it if you could talk to us a little bit about some of the positive ripple effects of the war on consciousness in your TED Talk and the good things that came out of that, because it's one of my favorite TED Talks ever.
Thank you.
The fact that it got banned made it even better.
Yes,
so.
Yes. there was a TEDx event in London, Whitechapel, in February 2013, where I was one of a number of speakers. Out of the 10 speakers who spoke, 2 of us had our talks banned by TED. One was me, with a talk called The War on Consciousness, and the other was Rupert Sheldrake, who is a scientist and famous for his morphic resonance theory. Actually, when we sat down and analyzed why they banned our talks, because the 2 talks were completely different, we discovered why exactly. They had banned our talks because both of us considered the possibility that consciousness was not local to the brain. This goes against a fundamental scientific dogma. Science is full of dogma, and materialist reductionism, which is the ruling ethic in science today, claims that consciousness is just, here's what they actually say, consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain activity. In other words, we got these big brains so that we could compete in the Darwinian jungle, and as an accidental byproduct of that, we got consciousness. They consider that all consciousness can be reduced to matter, that any conscious experience is a manifestation of material changes in the brain. And they do not consider the other possibilities. And the possibility that both Rupert and I considered in our talks is that the brain is not a generator of consciousness, but rather a transceiver of consciousness. That consciousness manifests through the brain, but is not made by the brain. That it is indeed not local to the brain, and that would perhaps explain telepathy and all sorts of other connections that people have, and sometimes our ability to just draw down inspiration from somewhere above that none of us can even understand. Well, TED banned the talk, and they put up this bogus explanation of why. It turned out, actually, that they had preconceptions about what Rupert and I would say in our talks, and they banned the talks on the basis of those preconceptions. They didn't actually bother to listen to the talks. So every one of the statements they made as to why they had banned our talks turned out to be completely incorrect and not founded in any facts of the talks themselves. We pointed out to them that they had defamed us. And defamation actually can result in lawsuits, Ted, unless you can make this stand up. At which point they agreed to a compromise. They would put our talks back online. They would cross out all their objections and keep them there crossed out permanently, and they would publish our rebuttals. So they did that. But meanwhile, lots of people, great people out there on the internet, realizing I got 3 hours notice that my talk was going to be taken offline. I put the word out on Facebook, and within minutes, dozens of other versions of the talk were up on YouTube. TED tried to suppress them all, but it couldn't, and the talk ended up getting millions and millions of views across dozens of channels. And that's what happens when free-thinking individuals are confronted by a hierarchical organization that wants to tell them what to think. Yeah. Thank you. And I do think it's had a ripple effect. I think it's helped a lot of people to realize the way the controlling minds that are at work behind our society. Yeah.
Graham, I am a botanist working with an ethnobotanist and a team of archaeologists at the Galt Archaeological Site, just north of Austin, outside of Florence. Mm-hmm. This group is studying the Clovis culture, and said to be, at this site, the oldest known occurrence of man, Homo sapiens as we know it, in North America.
Said to be until recently.
Well, that was part of my question. Is your perspective on that?
Well, the Clovis first model has been completely discredited. There's not a single archaeologist that, well, perhaps there's one or two, but her clinging on to the old model. But the fact that we have crucial DNA evidence which shows an ancient founder populations in the Americas, and the fact that we have sites, whether it's Monteverde in Chile, whether it's the Bluefish Caves in the Yukon, whether it's the Topper site, whether it's San Diego Cerruti Mastodon site, the fact that we have got sites going back 130,000 years makes it a lost cause to continue to defend Clovis as the first culture that was in America. Clovis was a culture that was in America, but it was not the first.
Okay. If I have another chip.
Go for it.
Is there any connection between the Clovis? Do we have any evidence that they were tied to Atlantean culture?
Well, that's a whole other investigation. And actually, I'm going to be going into that in the new book that I'm writing about ancient America. I'm going to be looking at that. There are other intriguing things. There are curious similarities between the Solutrean tool set that you find in Europe about 25,000 years ago and the tool set used by Clovis around 13,000 years ago. There's a lot. Clovis is a very mysterious and interesting culture, and actually they were very advanced in many, many ways, and they were all over the United States. You know, the type site is actually in New Mexico, but this culture was everywhere, all over America. I think it has many secrets still to reveal. What is certain is that this culture went down around 12,860 years ago. And then we have evolutions from that, Folsom, which follow after that. But really, I think the important takeaway message for me is Clovis was not the first. Let's get that bad idea out of the way. It's been polluting archaeology for half a century. Let's get it out of the way and open our minds to the possibility that the past of North America is incredibly mysterious and has been obscured by natural disasters and deliberately obscured by human stupidity.
One last question, please.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off. I'm getting the cue here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we only have 10 more minutes, so please only one question apiece, and we'll try to get through this group, but we only have 10 minutes.
Hi, Garrett.
Hey, Graham.
Hi.
Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Much, much love to you, brother.
Thank you.
And so my question is, through all the work that you've done in all the ancient sites and seeing all the hieroglyphs and all the depictions of ancient technologies, how can we bring forth technologies nowadays to help us to remember our true place in the universe?
Well, I think thank you. So it's an interesting question. I think the first thing we need to stop doing we need to stop thinking of ourselves as this super advanced civilization. We have pursued a particular track, and that track depends on technology and on mechanical advantage. And it plays such a dominant role in our lives that when we look for lost civilizations in the past, we look for civilizations that made tech just like us. In other words, what we are doing is looking at the past as a mirror and trying to find ourselves in it. We are not looking at it as a window to let it speak to us directly. I think we have to consider the possibility that ancient civilizations had whole different ways of manipulating matter, which did not necessarily involve machinery. You see, as we went down the machinery track, certain faculties of the human mind, telekinesis, telepathy, psi power, all of these faculties which are evidenced in so many experiments and so much personal experience today, were allowed to lapse. And we became dependent upon the machine. And the fact is that I think all of us have these faculties, but they have been switched off. They're dormant in the majority of the human race. Some individuals are born blessed with access to those faculties, but for most of us, they're asleep and they're dormant, and something needs to be done to wake them up. So I think we have to consider the ancient traditions. For example, that the large blocks of stone were used with sound, were moved with sound, with sound energy, with the chanting of priests, the certain musical instruments were used. We have to consider the possibility that techniques existed to soften stone, and that all of these projects were not undertaken for materialistic profit and gain reasons of the kind that make sense to us. They were all undertaken as part of the human journey and the human experience. You know, it's habitual, if you look particularly in the 19th and early 20th century, the way that Native American culture is described by the white guy. They're constantly putting it down and describing them as, you know, savages and primitives and things like that. Native American culture lived light on this land for tens of thousands of years. What can define a more successful civilization than that? A culture that lives in harmony with the universe, that lives light on the land, that honors and respects the beauty of Mother Earth. That is a successful civilization. You know, just because we've got motor cars and airplanes does not mean we're a successful civilization. We could become just a blip in the story of human history, forgotten in a few hundred years from now. It's perfectly possible. So we need to stop being so proud of ourselves. I don't think that tech is necessarily the answer to everything. I think we need to reawaken those dormant faculties in the human mind, rediscover our true birthright. I hope that helps. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it looks like we've come to an end. I am grateful for the healing, grateful for all the love, grateful to be amongst so many open-minded, free-thinking people. Thank you. And thank you to Tim and Anne for organizing this fantastic event. These are two of the greatest people in the world. Thank you. Love you, man.
And so I just want to say again that I'm grateful to all of you for attending, and Graham is making a difference on the planet. The work that he is doing, the courage that he has, the heart, the humility, this is a walking master. Another round of applause, please.
Thank you.